Jackie Harris. I've been here for just over 18 months. I've been brought to WWT at Slimbridge in order to run the Scott project, which is now called Slimbridge 2020, which is about developing this site and opening this house to the public. Peter Scott's story starts with his dad. His father was Scott of the Antarctic, probably the most famous British explorer of the last century. He died on Antarctica, sent a letter home to his wife before he died, knowing he was going to die. And in that letter it says, make the boy interested in nature, it's so much better than sport. In a prophetic sort of way though, his dad kind of scoped out some of Scott's life from then on inwards. And so his life, ended up revolving around nature, and he became what David Attenborough calls a patron saint of conservation. He grew up and became a painter very quickly, very interested, and if you look around this room, full of his paintings. But then the war came, and so Scott ends up, he's been in what they call the Wavy Navy, which was basically the reserves, and he quickly became commander of his own ship. After the war, Scott started writing to people to say, I need to set up a wildlife registry. What have you got? The letters back all explain why he was doing it then. Everybody had eaten all the geese, ducks, swans, because we were at war. It's suddenly this idea of setting up this sanctuary straight after the war makes sense. There isn't a bird hardly in the country. Everything's been eaten. Simple as that. Scott has set up this centre and a few others, and he was wanting to set up a centre in London. There was a great big waterworks owned by Thames Water. It had been decommissioned. It was Victorian. And he started painting it from how he imagined it would be. He died before he'd finished that painting. He painted in the picture 42 widgeon. The London Wetland Centre did come to fruition. There were no widgeon at London. The first time they arrived, 42 widgeon arrived. Now, that's prophetic. That's sort of, that's incredible, makes my spine tingle. But the other thing, in terms of just the sheer cheek of him, he approached Thames Water and said, I want this site for a wetland centre. And they said to him, you can't really be expecting us to give you this land. He said, no, I'm not expecting you to give me the land. He said, I'm expecting you to give me the land and the £6 million needed to develop it. They did. And so we now have a London Wetland Centre. It's the second most popular of all the Wildfowl and Wetland Trust centres, right in the heart of big city. So incredible. The idea to open this up as a museum started before I came here. Lady Scott died in 2010, and we bought from the family the house pretty much lock, stock and barrel. Just being in here, you start to feel some of the stuff that Scott was involved in, because it's oozing out of every book binding and every painting in the room. What we have is a house untouched almost, because this room didn't change. So we realised this room was quite important, and we'd kind of taken it for granted, but then other people are coming in saying this is quite amazing. In that chair there, he did the first conservation programmes that went into people's homes, the Look programme. He wasn't particularly comfortable on television, but absolutely he knew he needed to do that to get into people's homes. So we're constantly having to break new ground, and that stays with us because of Scott. He understood that people need to have a good time, they need to love what they're looking at. So the hand feeding, absolutely a critical part of the Scott story. That was one of the things that he knew. Feeding a goose can change somebody's life forever, and we still do it. We will never stop doing that, and I can't see that ever being on the horizon for us. In this room, Scott decided he would study the Buick swans. When they started arriving, being an artist, he started to understand that every single one of them has an individual facial pattern. A bit like we have a fingerprint, they have a face print. So he started painting front, left and right of all the birds that came here. And because he was doing that and looking at them in such extraordinary detail, what he realised was he could see the relationships between birds year after year after year. We've got some birds that have been coming back for 26 years. So we have the most meticulous diaries since the early 1960s up to the present day of every bird, every Buick swan that's ever come to Slimbridge. Also from here, the first worldwide moratorium on whaling. People don't associate Scott with whaling, but he was the one who set that up for the first time ever. He also, from here, with colleagues, set up the Worldwide Fund for Nature, the World Wildlife Fund, the PANDA. So the panda is his artwork. He drew that original panda. In terms of conservation, we usually think of wetlands, but actually he was involved in many, many things, and that happened here in this room. There's so many things I want to ask him about. I suppose it's just, where did he have the gall to do it? Everything he approached was from the perspective of, well, this is going to happen. And it still lives here, that feeling of, this is going to be really difficult. Okay, well, how do we do it then? Most places, this is going to be really difficult, or we'll do something else. He was just incredible at everything. So that's what I'd ask him. Where did that come from? We all want a bit of that.